This season on the Technopath Way, we're tearing down barriers to dive deep into the unspoken realities of Salesforce and technology. From unpacking frustrations in the nonprofit industry cloud to unveiling some of the untold narratives. So, join us as we navigate the complexities and potentials of these vital tools shaping our professional lives. And for season 3, the first guest, I could have thought of no other person. The first person that came to mind was Michael Kolodner. Michael is a declarative Salesforce engineer, a multi-time Salesforce MVP, and an advocate for leveraging technology to empower nonprofits. Michael embodies the spirit of harnessing Salesforce's potential for social impact. Through his blog, freelikeapuppy.tech, he enlightens us about the realities of Salesforce for nonprofits, likening the adoption of a puppy rather than free beer when you're talking about your free Salesforce licenses. He's not just a technologist, but he's passionate enabler of efficiency and problem solving and positive change. Michael's expertise can help us redefine the way we perceive and maximize our Salesforce within the ecosystem. So, thank you so much for joining me, Michael, today. Tell us a little bit more about your journey. What drove your passion for empowering nonprofits through this platform, and how you've been working over your career, the years.
Thank you, Sarah. It's great to be here. I really appreciate you having me. I have been in the Salesforce ecosystem since 2013, beginning of 2013, so almost 12 years now. I was an accidental admin. I was working at a nonprofit after coming back to my first job, from after being a stay-at-home dad. We needed CRM. And as the, techie in the office, I was tasked with checking out the options. And this Salesforce thing sounded like a good deal because it's free. So we ended up implementing with the help of a partner, but I started playing around with the system and I kind of fell in love because I was able to make it do what I wanted, unlike many other technology systems I had encountered over the years, trying to customize them. But mostly I fell in love with the power of Us Hub and the generosity of the community, people sharing their time and their wisdom with me, helping me get up to speed, answering my questions. And I eventually started answering questions, looked for my next job as a full-time Salesforce admin, started getting involved with the community, going to sprints and Dream-ins and Dreamforce. And here I am now, 3.5 or almost 4 years into my next role as an independent Salesforce consultant, working entirely with nonprofits.
Right. Oh, beautiful. And so in that community, you decided to start this blog, Free Like a Puppy, and it's really intriguing. Can you kind of elaborate some of the key challenges nonprofits face when adopting Salesforce, and
Absolutely.
how your blog and things that you put out there help them navigate that effectively?
Well, it's right there in the title. The main focus of my blog is that Salesforce is free like a puppy, not free like a beer. So you don't, other people have likened it to they park a Boeing 747 in your front yard and hand you the keys, right? It's an incredibly powerful system. It's an amazing gift to the world that Salesforce, grant 10 free licenses to all nonprofits. But just because those 10 free licenses are free does not mean it is free to maintain your technology system on Salesforce. If you want it to hum smoothly and do what you need to do and be customized for your needs, you've got to figure out how to do that, whether that's putting time and energy into learning it yourself, hiring a consultant, spending time learning by going to conferences and getting involved in the community, et cetera. All of that has a cost. And I think it's worth it, but I think you have to understand those costs and realize what you're going to be putting into it. The first few posts after I started the blog were literally about putting down on paper what is the true cost of ownership of
Mhm.
Salesforce. because when you talk to Salesforce, when you talk to AEs, which stand for account executives, but let's face it, they're salespeople. They're not going to talk about the cost. They're not going to talk about the price. They're going to talk about all the wonderful things it can do for you. But
Right.
there is a bottom line. And that bottom line is not just the cost of Salesforce. Again, if you talk to an AE, if you're a small nonprofit and you tell them we're going to have 9 users, well, the price is zero, but you need help to implement. You need a backup solution. You need other tools that might integrate. You need other tools around your system. And so there is a bottom line cost of ownership that is different than the bottom line on your annual contract with Salesforce. And so I wanted to really make that clear for people.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that bottom line for nonprofits, how do you think it's different, or have you thought about how it's different if you're using a system that isn't so robust in terms of your cost? What are the different costs that might not be financial that you have if you're not using a more robust system?
I mean, that's a great question. And it's not the part I've really delved into, perhaps as much as I should. And you're giving me things to put on the list. But let's use the example of fundraising software, right? There are hundreds probably of options out there in the world for fundraising platforms that any nonprofit could use. If you choose one that integrates with Salesforce and has a convenient integration, then you can set up your integration and that data flows into Salesforce, and it just is lovely and everything is rainbows and roses, except of course for the duplicate contexts that get created when people use different email addresses. But we'll pretend that doesn't happen. Um, but there are lots of organizations out there that do their fundraising in a different system and their program management in Salesforce. Well, now you have the cost of when you want to figure out how many of your volunteers are donors, how many of your clients are donors, you can't, if your systems are not integrated, do that easily. And there's a cost, because when your executive director says, I want to know how many of our volunteers are donors, someone's got to sit down and probably pull a spreadsheet from Salesforce and a spreadsheet from the other system and try to marry them up based on, let's assume email address is a good unique identifier if you have it in both systems. There's a cost right there of someone's time and effort and energy to answer what should be a simple question.
So, as somebody who's deeply involved in the nonprofit space, like you and I are, what do you think the most pressing technology needs are for organizations today?
I think I would answer that in two ways. The first seems fairly obvious, which is the whole fundraising side, right? Most organizations, particularly when they're young and they're just getting started, their fundraising is not terribly organized. Maybe it lives in a spreadsheet, or maybe it lives in the back end of whatever online platform you had set up. And that is the, really easy, quick win of not just Salesforce and the nonprofit success pack or nonprofit cloud, but any nonprofit focused CRM. That is the immediate use case, right? Is let's organize your fundraising data. And I think that's
Right.
super important. And I think that is probably the largest challenge for a lot of organizations. Even if they already have a system, that system may be old or not meeting their needs. And so upgrading that is, clearly job one. The one that gets me most excited, that I spend most of my consulting career on, is the program management side, the work that's custom and special for every organization. Every nonprofit is different. And I feel like it's not wrong to say they're different in ways that businesses are not always different from each other. Of course,
Right.
every business is different, but if you boil it down to selling things, they're kind of all the same on a level. But nonprofits, because they're not selling things, they're all about their program. They're completely different. No two are alike. And I love the challenge of building a custom system to run your program, do your analytics, keep your fundraising data lined up with your program data. It's a completely customized challenge, and that's what excites me. There are, the program management module and other solutions that are supposed to sort of abstract it so that everyone can use, quote, the same system. But I almost always come down on the side of build in the build versus buy debate, because I don't want my clients having to change their terminology if they don't have program engagements for their clients. They have classes or, you know, so we end up usually coming down on the build versus buy. We come down with build. Um, and I think my clients benefit from, in the long run, we spend marginally more time building something, but it is 100% custom to the way they do their work.
And overall, in the long run, it will cost them less in time because you
Absolutely.
built it the most efficient way for them.
Absolutely. I have nothing against products like the program management module. We usually do the analysis and we say, it's going to take me almost as long to customize PMM for your use as to just build you what you want. So I'll just build you what you want.
I love that. I really do. So, your advocacy for nonprofits to make the most of their Salesforce investment is wonderful. Could you share some strategies or tools that you believe are essential for maximizing that impact for Salesforce? So, within that nonprofit setting, what are some things that, other than, I mean, I think that one that you just hit on, build versus buy, is really great. But when do you buy?
So I am super, super cheap. Let's just start there. When I
Right.
was a solo admin, before that, when I was doing part-time admin for the organization where I learned Salesforce, you know, I had zero or functionally zero budget to buy stuff. A little bit here and there, maybe a document generation solution or some little tools, but I anything that's going to have a, X dollars per user per month was probably off the table. So
Mm,
my absolute focus, and it still is as a consultant, my absolute focus is how can we do this free or cheap? How can we bootstrap it?
right.
So I heavily leverage, you know, list views for bulk editing instead of a grid solution. Or I love Apsona as a tool. I actually put it in my contracts that my clients need Apsona because it's going to save them money when I have to do data imports for them. It's going to take me a lot
Oh,
less time. So it's going to save them money. So once they have Apsona, if they need document generation, it's a very inexpensive additional cost on Apsona. So let's use that instead of choosing Conga or Nintex or some of the other tools that are out there. Let's just, go with the cheapest add on, and Apsona's DocGen is just as powerful as anyone needs anyway. So it's not like they're losing out on functionality. I heavily leverage, Salesforce's email functionality, flow, and screen flows when necessary. Screen flows can take time to build, but once they're speeding up the process of your users doing their work, it's an incredible time saver. I love form assembly. Their price has increased almost exponentially in the
I
last year,
know,
which
right?
makes me so angry. But that being said, I have a client who just recently got a form assembly account, and they looked at the cost and they said, not a problem at all, because we are basically going to save one of our people 35 to 40 hours a week of data entry by,
Okay.
by pushing a paper form onto a form assembly form. They were like, if I can save that much time, form assembly is worth the price. I wish it were a third the price, but yes, absolutely. And I do some whiz bang things with form assembly for some of my clients that allow them to avoid, let's say, the cost of maintaining a Salesforce community or experience cloud site.
So, transparency is all about this season. So, what is that form assembly cost for nonprofits now? What was it
Uh,
and what is it now?
so great question. And I don't have the numbers like at the very tip, but I believe Perform Assembly Premier, which was under their old system. You can't get Premier anymore, but Premier was the level that got you the pre-fill connector, which is my
Mhm.
favorite feature of Form Assembly. And I've written a blog post on it. So you can see that on Free Like a Puppy. Um, Premier was, I want to say it was like $2,700 a year is what's in my head.
Mhm.
Uh, they've gotten rid of Premier, and now I believe you have to be at the level they call Team, I think it is, and Team with a Salesforce connector, which is an add-on price. It's not all bundled. They've broken it up a bit. Team, I think, starts at basically $6,000 a year.
Right.
So
Yes.
they've doubled to almost tripled the price. That's a
Okay.
lot.
That is a lot. I
Just to
again
do the
with
math.
wanting to the theme of this, like talking about things that people aren't talking about on recordings or
Shall we talk about prices going up?
so yes. So let's I'll back up before I talk about prices going up for nonprofits. Do want to talk about a couple of things that you mentioned in events that I've been to or watched. So I watched the True to the Core at Dreamforce where you asked about clicking. So as an admin, you have to click a bunch of times just to create multiple fields. You talked about that on the admin side. And then for Nonprofit Cloud, you talked about how information doesn't seem to be available to the actual nonprofits on how the product works,
Mm,
so that nonprofits who are using Nonprofit Success Pack can't really dig into it the way that partners can because there's some stuff in our partner community that they keep gated. So I'll speak to the first, and then we can roll into the nonprofit cloud discussion.
sure. So I think it was Dreamforce 22, I think, when I asked the first true to the core question. The gist of it on the clicks was, we as admins spend enormous amounts of our time automating things for our users. That is the power of a system like Salesforce, that if something took you 10 clicks, I should be able to make it take you 2 clicks if you're doing it every time. And if I can't, we should probably discuss this process further until I can.
Right.
But behind the gear, as it were, once you get into setup, very little is automated. Very little has changed in the last 10 years that I've been working on the platform. The perfect example is the new field wizard. It's just an enormous number of clicks. It's click new field, then click the field type, then the field name, then to add it to page layouts, probably not in that order, then to add it to permission sets or profiles, and finally save or save and new. And if you do save and new, you're starting completely from scratch. And if you're about to make 5 currency fields, or let's say 3 currency fields this year, last year, and 2 years back, you want them to have the exact same name. You want them to have basically the same description and the same help text. Plus, they're the same field type and same field length. Why do I have to do the same number of clicks in a circle every time? And yet, it's kind of the only way. There are some other tools, but they have their own drawbacks. So that was my question in True to the Core. And to Salesforce's credit, I think Parker Harris absolutely understood the point of the question. And most importantly, Cheryl Feldman, who is the PM in charge of user access, but also a huge advocate for button click admins, really took on board that criticism. And she is working in her domain to fix it. Some other PMs came up to me right after the session or found me the next day as I was walking around, and, they got it and they're interested in working on it. I know it's going to take a long time. I understand that the setup tree, you have to be really careful that you don't break things. So I get it. But my plea was and continues to be, and I will probably ask it again in True to the Core at TDX this March. Um, can we make things easier for admins? It's not the showy stuff that they get to market. That's the problem, right?
Right. And I think that that's one of the Salesforce Saturday topics that I just did was around that, like looking at ideas that are 16 years old that seem really simple, like sorting a related list or a list view, but by more than one um, column
Yep.
that you can do in Excel for forever, right? And so people are used to doing that, and that's a user facing thing, not even a setup thing.
True.
But
But it's just
in
not, it's not showy. You can't market it. It won't be the focus of Dreamforce, the like multi-column sorting is gonna,
right. And and at what point is Salesforce responsible for, the whole true to the core is their core product. What point are they responsible for getting that done? And I'm very glad to hear that people talked to you and validated what you said. However, it doesn't seem to me, it seems
I agree.
very much
Progress still seems slow.
progress seems slow, but I can understand it now that when I'm thinking about it as an entrepreneur, I have energy that goes so many different directions. Like everything that you read says you should do one thing and then figure out how to do that well and spend all your energy in that and be successful at that. And you'll be more successful more quickly. And it is very difficult for me because I have oh, look at this thing, shiny object syndrome. So I think there's a little bit of that going on when you have geeks developing a product and you're like, oh, this generative AI, we got to hop on that. We got to, do this new, brand new thing. Oh, this is cool. And this is cool. And getting back to that, hey, you can customize this without knowing code piece is difficult, but it is a selling point. And how can we help to say, hey, you can market it as such? Um,
Well, so that's, I agree. And I think part of it is we need to keep the pressure on, which is why I have jumped up and been first at the microphone for 3 True to the Cores in a row, and I will continue doing so. I think we have to keep the pressure on. I really give full marks to Salesforce for elevating True to the Core, which used to be once a year at Dreamforce in a closed room, not recorded, and now it is open to the world, brought simulcast, on Salesforce Plus, which brings more pressure to, as long as the questions we ask pressure them. So full marks for them for listening, and we need to keep the pressure on. And I think we also need to. Um, I've tried to do this in my questions. Lead with gratitude. Say, call out that it is an amazing gift that we can do this thing without coding, right? Without making it our career from the moment we, start studying in college. And so we should continue to encourage and celebrate and share that side and say, look, we're your best advocates. People like me and you who are spending our free time having a conversation about Salesforce and we help market it for you because we're so enthusiastic. Keep the enthusiasm going by making my work easier, faster, more efficient. And I can see some progress. I agree. There are ideas on the idea exchange that, have languished for years and years. It does sometimes feel, not sometimes, it feels to me basically always futile to start a new idea on the idea exchange as opposed to trying to like buttonhole a PM at TDX. Feels like
mm,
I'll get the message faster that way, but we have to use all the tools at our disposal.
right.